I've got a phenomenal guest who's written or participated in a lot of books, worked for a huge publishing company. Now he's on his own. The Miracle Club is a motivational, inspirational book, but he's written 6 others. We'll talk about some of those books. We're probably going to get off target. If you're really in for a very serious one-direction conversation, you're probably better off clicking this computer off and going to find one. You're not going to get it here because we're going to be all over the place. But I have a lot of respect for my next guest, Mitch Horowitz. Thank you, my friend, for coming in.
Good to see you, man.
I told him he didn't need to get all the tattoos for us just for today, but he wanted to be decorated.
I took off my sweater.
Energy.
Just so I could be part of it all.
I feel
here.
old, man.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to get some color in me.
Well, this is a very street studio.
Yeah.
You know, you've got your brick in the background. You've got your graffiti mural over here. So bricks, I feel very at home.
Before we talk about the Miracle Club, I just want to say, like, what I love about you, many things, but you're always a generous, good guy, and you were at the beginning when I had no idea what I was doing. I know you probably don't remember this, but you were guiding me along when I did my first book, even, and my second book, because we do go way back.
We go way back.
And
15 years
you were just helping me along. But
Yeah.
when you're first doing you have no idea what you're doing.
Right.
And you were working for a pretty decent publisher at that time.
That's
you give
right.
me some do's and don'ts, and I'm always grateful to people that really are willing to help somebody, even though more than likely there's not much I was going to be able to do back in return for you. And so thank you for that. I appreciate the help back then, and it's led me now my 3rd book, and I'm actually working on a 4th. And you're rolling. Tell me about the Miracle Club. Why? Why that book? Why'd you write it?
It's the first practical book I've ever written, because previously I've written as a historian of alternative spirituality, but I've always told people I'm a believing historian. I've never tried to hide the fact that I'm interested in self-help philosophies. I'm interested in alternative spirituality. It's part of my life. And I decided it was time to step up and write about the actual hardcore practices that I do, that I recommend, that I think have been validated. And I really do take the mind's power very, very seriously. I think part of what happens to us in a concrete way reflects what we walk around thinking about. And I mean that in the most literal sense.
Who's this book for? If somebody's out there watching, why is this book for them? Who's this book for?
It's for the most intelligent, most motivated, motivational reader who knows what I'm saying is true, who knows from their own experience that thoughts contribute to concrete reality, but who has no patience whatsoever for woo-woo language or childishness or sloganeering, who wants a mature, steady, convincing approach to self-help philosophy. We take no prisoners in this book. There's no bullshit in this book. I really am very tired of the childish tone that sometimes appears in motivational literature and in New Age literature. And I've worked in publishing, as you were alluding, for 30 years. I know where all the bodies are buried. I can't stand authors who make up stories, who juice up stories, who disguise identities. There are people out there who sort of bullshit their readers by using devices, and they don't really come clean. I want a self-help book that talks about failures, because there are failures sometimes. I want a positive thinking book that says, some mornings you just can't do it. What are you supposed to do? And I want to hear stories of successes and struggles, and that's what I write about in the book, because we can't persuade ourselves that these philosophies really work if we don't talk about the fact that sometimes they don't. And that opens you to a question. Why? Why is there not always consistency with these ideas? It doesn't discredit these ideas. It deepens the questions we bring to them. So my wish is that this is really a grown-up book for people who are interested, as I am, in New Age and alternative spiritual philosophies.
Wow, that was not quite what I thought you were going to say. But
what did you think I was going to say?
Because
a little more woo-woo?
I have this whole thing about there are a lot of speakers and motivators that haven't done anything.
Not
so there is no
shit.
failures. It's
Thank
not like
you.
they're lying.
Thank
They
you.
just haven't done anything to fail. And it's funny you bring that up, because my last book, had a lot of reviews. You got to have balls.
Yeah.
And one review wasn't so good. There was a few that wasn't so good, but this was like one of the worst of reviews.
Yeah.
And he said, "How convenient it is for you, Mr. Steiner. Everything worked out just fine." And something, I took it to heart, because I said, everything I wrote in the Balls book was true.
Yeah.
And I really tried to just elaborate how I built Steiner, but I probably wasn't as transparent and honest as far as bringing forward the adversity, bringing
Yes.
forward the failures and the
Yes.
troubles.
Yes.
And it's hard to do that, because who wants to look in the mirror and say, Brandon, you're old, you definitely have gained weight, you're losing hair, you're an ugly son of a bitch, and you're just not as good looking as in shape as you used to be, or whatever it is. Nobody wants to look in the mirror and say, Brandon, you really screwed that up.
Mm-hmm.
But I took that to heart. Like that one review, I took
Yeah,
to heart.
yeah,
And it
I do the
motivated me to
same.
write Living on Purpose.
That's
like
excellent.
Living on Purpose is I spend an entire portion of the book
Yeah.
in grave detail about my failures
That's wonderful.
and how I dealt with them, why I feel like I got into that boat to begin with,
Yeah,
some of the things
yeah.
you want to avoid.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about the book. 'Cause I love that you bring that up. Is there an example of how you got to the mature part of your motivation in the book?
Absolutely. In the book, first of all, I make a point of talking about failures. For example, I failed in the world of journalism, at least at one time. When I was in my 20s, I was working as a daily newspaper reporter. I hated it. I wasn't well cut out for it. And one night, I let a really, really big story get away from me. And there was this woman in the newsroom, and I was sort of pissed off about it. And she said, you know, you gave it up. You let it go. You let it get taken from you. And I said, how could you say that? And she said, you should have chased it harder. You should have worked harder. You should have stood up to the editor who wanted to take it away from you. And I felt like somebody really punched me in the stomach. And I went home that night, and I fell to my knees, and I prayed to God, and I said, I am not going to stick around in this career as a mediocrity. If what my colleague says is correct, and I believed it was, then I got to get the fuck out of here. I've got to get out of here. And I made the decision within about 2 days to leave journalism. And that was a really tough decision because I let down a lot of people. And I had a lot of people who thought I was on a career track to be a journalist all my life, and I walked away from it.
Daily News is a big deal.
Well,
was a big gig back then.
It's a big gig,
highly publicized, a lot of readership.
I walked away from it for about 25 years. Now I'm back in the game, and I have recent bylines in Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, Time, you name it. I'm one of the few people who writes about alternative spirituality for mainstream newspapers and says whatever he wants. Throw my name into Google.
Give me a couple examples.
I'll give you a perfect example. Last week I had a wonderful essay on Machiavelli's The Prince in the Washington Post, taking a new look at the Prince. Washington Post the week before that had a terrific article on the gratitude movement and what's wrong with it. I've written for the New York Times about contemporary witch hunts. I've written for Time Magazine about the best self-help books you've never heard of, really esoteric, hardcore self-help.
What are a couple of the best self-helps you've never heard of?
Well, one of my favorites is a book called The Strangest Secret by a radio broadcaster named Earl Nightingale. Is that name familiar to you?
No.
Earl died many years ago, but he really started the audiobook industry in self-help. In 1956, Earl Nightingale, who's a hero to me, he was a radio announcer. He put out a vinyl album with a simple 40-minute lecture on it called The Strangest Secret. And it was basically his philosophy on why you become what you think about. It started the whole field of audio publishing, which really began on vinyl back in the 1950s. So, for example, you can find a book version of Earl's lecture, The Strangest Secret. That's one people haven't heard of. That's just extraordinary and wonderful. Yeah.
Talk to me about, by the way, if you like what we're doing here, please chime in here. If you got some questions, we're going to take them in a few minutes. Pop any question you want. We're going to have Mitch answer them. So if you don't get to them
And make
all,
them tough.
Yeah, I mean, don't
embarrass me.
We're open books here.
Embarrass
Talk
me.
to me about that article you wrote about gratitude, because I've seen a couple articles like this out there now. And also, there seems to be a tremendous lack of gratitude in this country. Is it because people don't understand what gratitude is? Or?
Well, you know, there's two problems.
Yeah.
The first is, as you just alluded, there's a huge lack of gratitude in this country, and I can't believe the degree to which well-off people, I'm not talking about people who are furloughed from the federal government, who have reason to be pissed off, but well-off people complain. Almost everybody in this country with a reasonably well-paying job is wealthy by the standards of the world at large and has to take real careful stock of their life if they're spending a lot of time complaining. But my problem with the gratitude movement, and I review about 10 books in the article, is that many of the books are written, and I hate to say this, but it's true, they're written from the perspective of like a kind of Volvo driving, NPR listening prosperity. And if you're going to write about gratitude, you're going to have to do what I attempt to do in the Miracle Club, which is you got to address people who have terminal diseases and who might die from them, who might not get better. You got to address people who are in economic dire straits, and there's no headhunter or search firm that's getting back to them. You have to address people who are facing life situations that may not change. If you cannot address those people, if you cannot address people who are living with chronic diseases or chronic pain, you don't really have a philosophy. You're just really preaching to a certain constituency. And a philosophy should be universally applicable. My wish is that people can read the Miracle Club and say to themselves, this disease I'm suffering from, I might die from, but I still got something from this guy's book. I still feel like this guy's talking to me, because I think we can't just talk to people who are in well-off circumstances and say, be grateful. We have to talk to somebody who might fucking be dying of skin cancer, God forbid.
You're killing me, Mitch. You're killing me right now.
What can you be grateful about?
You're killing me because I like to think that I'm somebody that tries to help people, but really what you're saying is you got to dial that up a notch. You got to go deeper than just the obvious.
Yeah.
Help people. Although help people is good.
It's good.
But it's
and
not great.
It's
You know,
not great.
The great help
Exactly.
is when you go deeper
Yeah.
and really find the real people that need the real help.
Absolutely.
And at the same token, there's a lot of people out there that can supply a lot more help than they're providing. Am I reading you right?
I totally dig that. Yes, that's exactly where I'm coming from. And it's funny. Several years ago, I was in my car. I was coming out of the Midtown Tunnel in Manhattan, and there was a poor guy who seemed slightly deranged who was going from car to car begging for money. And I said to myself, I could roll down my window and give the guy a couple of bucks. But what does my philosophy, if anything, have to offer somebody like that? And how do I confront that? Because this guy is in desperate straits. He might be a drug addict. He might be suffering from mental illness. And in the book, I really try to deal with that, because I can't just hand somebody like that a have a nice day refrigerator magnet and expect that they're going to do better. They're not going to do better. But one of the things I try to deal with in the book is that if you're into self-help, if you're into some of these philosophies, even if you're into, The Secret or what have you, which I have a lot of criticism for, but I'm not opposed to, you might need to combine that with medication. You might need to combine that with all kinds of modalities that are going to help you. So I believe you can see
What'd
mind
you do with
power.
the person when you got out of the tunnel? You got to finish that thought.
Well, the first thing is I did roll down my window and I did give him a few bucks.
Okay.
But I went home and I looked myself in the mirror and I said, am I a fucking fake? Because what can I hand that guy? And in the period of time since then, I have approached homeless people on the street. I have approached street people. I've given them a little pamphlet called It Works, which I happen to swear by, and I talk to them about it, and I offer them. Some of them appreciate it, some of them have intelligent conversations with me, and some say, get the fuck out of here. But I do make the effort.
Most people are sprinting away from those kind of people. You're sprinting as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Not think about it or not deal with it.
Right.
My mother always said, when I was like 10, we were downtown Maze going to do shopping with the
Maze,
Woolworths.
I remember
99 cent, but
I remember it.
Split, you pop the balloon.
Yeah.
Right? So we come out, we just cashed our welfare check, and we were feeling we was big, Alibaba here, we were we would go do our once a year shopping.
Isn't that something?
Once a year.
Yeah.
There was no dressing rooms in Maze. There was the
Yeah.
closeouts. They empty the boxes out on the table.
Right,
and
right.
You kind of measured it up, and if it fit,
I remember
that's what you had.
Maze.
That was your clothes for the year. So as we walked in, I never forget our welfare check was something like $54.
Okay.
Every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And my mother took a $1 bill and put it in this homeless person who was sitting right outside the entrance.
Something?
And I went right in that hat and I took the $1 out.
Wow.
My mother says, "Listen, what are you doing?" I said, "You know something? We can't afford to give this man $1." And I remember you're talking about 1969, 1970.
Right,
$1 was a lot more.
It's $20.
Like, what are you doing? I said, "We can't afford to give that man $1. We need that money."
Yeah.
And my mother said, "Yeah, but that man needs that money. Well, what do you suggest that man do?" He says, "Well, I think you should maybe go to work and find a job."
Right.
I'm working.
Right.
I'm 11. I'm working. He should be working.
Yep.
And my mother said, "Listen, I want to tell you something. I'll tell you something now. First of all, put that $1 back in the man's hat. And second of all, when someone asks you for help, just by the sheer definition, that means they need the help. It's not your job to question whether they need help or not.
Yeah.
That's for somebody upstairs to do."
Right.
And I live by the premise of do as much as you can for as many people as you can, as often as you can,
Right.
and expect nothing back. And my question to anyone out there is, what would you do for someone that you knew could never do something back for you? And when was the last time you did that? Because
it's a hell of a question.
To me, that's the sheer joy.
Yeah.
Helping people and expecting nothing back is not it's not an obligation or a burden. It's really an opportunity. It's sheer joy.
Right.
Is what I would try to send to every second grader in every school in this country.
Now I have to make a confession to you because I don't want to sound like I'm some guy sitting here with a halo around his head.
Yeah.
I live on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and I have to say it does get to me sometimes because there's a lot of people with very hungry eyes on the streets who are always sort of looking at you, checking you out, seeing, what they can get from you, who want to get one over. And it's tough. It's tough because the challenges greet you every few minutes, when you live down there. Yeah. And it's all I can do to sort of like keep your mother's principles in mind. It's not easy.
And that in mind, and also going back to the movie Oh God, where, when John Denver's complaining about, I don't know if you ever watched that movie, but
I watched it.
At the end of the movie, he just says, basically, listen, we have a lot of problems, but what I gave you to solve those problems is each other. And I think that people get confused about why we're here. It's not about getting the biggest money grab and as much as you can get for yourselves. We're all here to help each other.
Right.
We're all here to really basically collaborate with
Right,
each other.
right.
And do the best we can.
Right.
The game is not how can I do the best I can.
Right.
And I think the people that learn to do that more are the people that are happier. They're the people that are living in much more joy and living in a more successful life.
Yes.
The people that learn that enjoy and learn that helping others is why we're here.
Yes, yes. I want to call out something that you said in your remarks, and I'm sure you've talked about this before on the show, but it bears repeating. You know, your family was on welfare when you were a kid. You grew up in tough circumstances. Likewise, my family, when I was a kid, we were not on welfare, but I overheard my parents talking about going on food stamps one night. We wore used clothing. We used kerosene heaters to heat the home. When you have a last name like mine and you're from Long Island, people think you grew up on Easy Street, and they have good reason to think that. Yeah. And so, you know, it's also important to point out we didn't start on third base. Now, I have to say, and I'm not trying to get on some political trip here, this is my own personal view. I believe we do live in a racist society, and it is easier for white people to get certain places in a world that is very imbalanced. So I'm not like trying to say...
So you still feel that minorities are at a major disadvantage?
Without question. That's my personal feeling. I do believe we live in a racist society.
I know we're living in a segregated society.
Yeah.
People think that we're all cool now, but we're separating ourselves from all over the place.
I agree entirely.
It's sad.
That said, it's still important to point out that, you know, you weren't born on third base. You know, I wasn't born on third base. There are prejudicial advantages that our society gives to some people and not to others, and it's a serious problem. However, you know, your mom was shopping at Mays with a welfare check. We were heating the house in the winter with kerosene heaters, and that is not make-believe. That is absolutely real. And so I feel that some of the solutions I talk about in the Miracle Club, I don't know how you feel, but I do feel that attitude of mind was more than just healthy psychology. I think it helped bring about some actual things and concrete changes in my life.
Give me a couple solutions you got at the Miracle Club. Give me a couple.
Okay, one of the things I talk about is things that you walk around thinking about, ways that you picture yourself, people you picture yourself with, the company that you picture yourself in. After an interval of time, if you look back on your life, you will find uncanny congruencies between things that you've been thinking, especially when you were very, very young, and things that you may be experiencing in old age. And a lot of people want to push back against that, but I would say take it slow there. There's this famous expression, careful what you wish for, you just might get it. It actually came from the philosopher Goethe, who really said, what you wish for when you are very young will come upon you in waves when you are old, so be careful. And a lot of people would want to argue with that because they might say, hey, look, my dreams didn't come true, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. And I would say, dial it back. Go back to who you were when you were 3 years old, when you were having your earliest memories. You will find, if you really scrutinize what you were thinking about, good and bad, uncanny congruencies between shit that came upon you in middle age. It's absolutely remarkable.
I agree with you 100%. But if I became what I was thinking about when I was younger, I would have become a woman. So that's a lot of what I was thinking about as a teenager.
It's not too late, Brandon.
Well,
we're here for you.
I was just
we support you.
My point was I was thinking a lot about girls. I didn't want to become one, but I was thinking a lot about girls. No. So therefore, I would have become a woman.
I think that was an admission, and we support you.
You know me as a teenager, man. I love women, but at the end of the day, and I love my wife. I mean, and there's a lot to love there. But that's a very good point. I do believe so much of where we are raised, who raises us, where we're raised, and what our whole environment is a big part of who we become. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like I have 100 basketballs in my basketball court. I have a basketball court. Like, why? Because as a kid, I could never find a basketball. And I'm thinking in my delusional mind that I may not have a ball again. I make sure I'm good.
Right.
And I have backups for the backups for the backups, which is insane at 59. How much am I playing? Twice a week?
Right.
How many balls do I need?
Right.
But I'm thinking in my mind, I may run out of those basketballs.
No matter what happens, I will have one
extra
basketball.
balls, and I still need more.
So hence the title of one of your maxims. You got to have balls. You mean that literally.
Well, it's when you have so little sometimes, you do accentuate on making sure you have probably more than what you need to compensate for the fact that you made run out or not have enough.
And you know what? There's probably something healthy in that too. There is something healthy in that. Overcompensating can create things that are hugely important and necessary. There may be some guy who cures cancer next week who's overcompensating for something. So, these cracks in our psychology can also be hugely helpful. Now, here's something I write about in the book, and I'd be curious your take on this. I always say that if I want people to take one thing away from my work, and I mean this with all my heart, and I would say this to anybody, having one definite absolute aim in life. I mean, one really narrow, passionate, obsessively felt aim, I think brings unique energy to people. And anybody that you admire, chances are, whoever they may be, a diplomat or an athlete or a soldier, they lived for one thing. And I think well-roundedness is overrated, to be perfectly frank. I really do.
I can't I always say the most important thing has to be the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing like being incredibly good at one thing. It opens up more doors to do more things. People say, I want to get doors. I said, you want to get doors open up for all these things you're thinking about?
Yeah.
Be great at one thing.
One thing. I really feel that way.
And I always thought about, for years, I was just thinking about, I know I could sell a lot of these signed baseballs. I wasn't thinking about a whole lot of,
Right.
And it's amazing how.
Isn't that crazy? You didn't think, gee, I want to have my own show. You wanted to sell signed baseballs. Now you have your own show and you sell baseballs, then you write. Among other things.
Yeah,
you sell a lot of fucking
half
baseballs
illiterate.
too.
600,000 people on the blog on brandsteiner.com.
It's wonderful.
And
yeah,
I got almost a 0 on my SAT, and it's in Freshman English 3 times. But because I could sell a lot of baseballs, it gives me the opportunity now to maybe have an opinion about some other things.
That's right. And
Is that crazy?
It's I don't
insane.
Kind of comporting with that. I don't like that expression, no one on their deathbed wishes they spent more time at the office. I don't actually believe that's true, because the office could be the martial arts studio, it could be the potter's wheel, it could be the stage, it could be the studio, it could be the office. But when people are expressing something that's profoundly important to them, it covers a lot of bases.
I'll be on my deathbed and say, honey, please take me to the office. Take me out of this hospital.
And why not?
I need to die in my office,
Why
please.
not? Why not? You're among
better
friends.
than being at home. You're
doing useful
things. You got a
things.
makeshift bed, over there instead of the living room. Now you got your bedroom. That's
I think it's
depressing, man. I'd rather just die in my office. At least I got the refrigerator right there.
That's right.
All that, right?
You employ dozens of people.
Fair. Yeah, I like that.
You provide people with ideas. You provide them with things that brighten up their life. You have your show. You write your books. I just feel that when people are obsessed about one passionate aim, it very often covers a lot of bases. They're paying for a lot of stuff, and I hope they're providing something productive and useful for a lot of people. But as with you, you wanted to spin one wheel, but that wheel had a lot of spokes and it allowed you to do a lot of things.
For me, my whole core, since I'm a little kid, is about providing value. People don't talk about value enough, but I think if you can come up with a really cool idea of something you love doing, that you can provide value.
Yeah.
Something you can do for someone they can't do for themselves.
Right.
That's special. Isn't it great when somebody comes and does something for you can't do for yourself? Even if it's putting an app on your phone or fixing your phone or figuring out how to work the VCR.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll tell you this, one of the things I'm proudest of in my publishing career, as you were alluding, I worked in publishing for a long time. I was the editor-in-chief of a New Age publishing division at Penguin for several years. And during the Great Recession of 2008, which was bad times, Borders, the book chain went out of business, bad times. Not one person from my imprint lost his or her job, and I was really proud of that.
Cool.
That meant something to me. I could talk about
strong
this
brand,
book, that
Penguin.
book. Yeah.
Still
And,
today.
there was all kinds of things I could kind of beat the drum about and say I was happy about.
But knowing everything you know about book publishing,
meant to
everything,
me a
surprised to see you keep cranking out some books.
Yeah.
But you figured it out?
Well, yeah, to some extent I have figured it out. I don't have like a rosy view of publishing. There's a lot of things wrong in publishing, and there's a lot of apathy and a lot of fecklessness in publishing. And I won't censor myself in terms of talking about it,
Is it cool that just almost anybody can publish a book?
No, it's not cool. And it's not cool that almost anybody can work at a publishing company, because I think in the departments that include publicity, marketing, production, there's a hell of a lot of apathy, and it's a real problem. And when you hear authors complaining, they're not just blowing smoke. It's wrong. It's a problem. Industry needs to be fixed.
It seems like we're getting into a deeper part of the
Tough questions.
Deeper part of the pool here than just kind of how you feel good or the art of not giving a shit. I got all these books, the art of not giving a shit.
Right.
Listen, anybody could just say, something. I don't give a shit anymore. But To me, I think one of the most important things that I'm proud about is that I do give a shit.
I do give a shit.
Yeah, I do
and
give a shit
I
about a
don't
lot of
advise or practice non-attachment or
how many of those books
non-identification.
have you seen now out there, like The Art of Not Giving a Shit, The Art of Not Giving an F, or now there's a new wave of like dialing yourself down and minimizing your belongings, and there's this whole wave around that.
I minimize my belongings because I don't want distractions.
I'm not giving up my 100 basketballs. I told my wife when I told her the story the other day, like, and I'm not getting rid of the balls. I want to keep the balls. I feel a lot better when I go to sleep knowing I have 100 basketballs. I admit it.
Doesn't hurt anybody.
Yeah, it's not hurting anybody. My daughter's all over me because I have 250 gray T-shirts. That's my favorite T-shirt I wear when I work out.
Fair enough.
It's just like that. If you wear, you almost have like one per day per year. I'm like, you know something? I love my gray T-shirts.
Yep.
And every morning I pick out my favorite one out of my favorite.
Yeah.
I'm not giving them up.
Yeah, I like the idea of a uniform. One of the things I write about is...
You think should there be more uniforms? We take a lot of pressure off kids.
Oh, yeah. I mean it literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
I write about the psychology of clothing, and I think if there's one thing that you feel comfortable in, just wear it. Just wear it. Obama did that. Steve Jobs did that. I do that. The same day I have a lot of T-shirts, but I almost always wear a T-shirt, my scarf or something, and I'm good for the day, and that's it.
A lot of pressure on the whole clothing as far as the way people view you and the way you look, especially with kids going to school. I love schools. Now, when I think about it, I love the schools that have uniforms, and this way you don't have that peer pressure.
I think it actually can be very good for kids, and I think in adulthood it's good to have a uniform. I mean that figuratively. With your gray T-shirts. Wear the same thing every day. It not only takes the psychological pressure off you, but it increases confidence. The inside and the outside are not different things. It's all part of one whole. And I think when you're dressed comfortably, that's a deeper statement than you might realize. And I encourage people to be free that way.
Ben, any questions for Mitch?
Yeah, this is from Michael. When you left your job in journalism, how long did it take you to figure out what you wanted to do next?
It took me a hell of a long time, Michael. I went into publishing almost as a consolation career. And I remember I was walking around and I was saying, I just feel like I stand for nothing. I feel like I'm throwing things at the wall and seeing whatever sticks. And then I rediscovered myself as a writer, probably back in the year 2003. I wrote a profile of the pitcher Barry Zito, who at the time was pitching for the Oakland A's. Yeah, and it was great. And Barry's father called me a couple of weeks later, and he was a tough guy. And he said to me, Mitch, that article was terrific. You stick with this thing, by which he meant you stick with writing about spiritual experience, metaphysical experience, which was a big part of Barry's training regimen, big part of his parents' life. So it was about 2003, which must have been about 20 years into my publishing career, give or take, that I started to rediscover myself as a writer. It meant everything to me. But it took a long time. And I always like people to know, I'm 53. I didn't publish my first books until I was over the age of 40. I just want people to know that.
Same.
Middle age doesn't mean like, well, the sun is setting. I've never been happier in my life. I'm happier at age 53 than I was at age 13. Yeah. I wouldn't trade it.
And you feel better too?
I feel great. Yeah.
Love that.
From Tyler, what routines do you have in the morning to get you mentally ready for the day?
Okay, well, I have a very specific routine in the morning that I picked up from a friend of mine named Royce Christian, and he has his own book coming out about this, which is going to be called Suddenly Right. Royce has this exercise, and it's all his, and all credit goes to him, where you wake up in the morning and you basically write out a script of what's going to happen over the course of your day, but you write it out in past tense as if it already occurred. Then, in the evening, you get another book, use two separate journals, you write down a book that lays out what actually happened that day, and you watch over a period of 4 weeks, these things begin to converge, and it is uncanny. And it will put you in front of a lot of questions about yourself and the powers within you. I have been using Royce's exercise for 3 months, and it is dynamic. His book, Suddenly Right, which I wrote a forward to, is going to be killer. It's coming from my same
Because it's
publisher.
a little bit like pictorialization.
Yes.
It's kind of like if you're trying to date this girl like when you were younger.
Yes.
And you imagine you're already like going to the prom with her.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you haven't even talked to her yet.
Exactly.
And then you work
got
backwards.
It. You
right?
nailed it. You nailed
it's
it.
Unbelievable.
Part
like
of why
you picture, hitting the game-winning shot, you haven't even walked on the court yet, and you work backwards.
Exactly.
Right.
And part of the reason why his exercise is so successful is that it mitigates against making these absurd leaps because you're doing it day by day. And so you can't say, today I won an Oscar, because it's ridiculous. But what you can do is say, today, I read a script for an indie movie that I might be in or something, something realistic, whatever it is you do in life. But these things in bite-sized increments build up after a while, and they keep you from engaging in this kind of idle daydreaming.
Yeah,
it's very powerful. Put you in front of a lot of questions.
I'm a big daydreamer, and I started working that backwards thing because
Yeah.
at the end I always say, don't chase the money, chase the things that make the money.
Yeah.
But in order to know what those things are, because could be a complex thing.
Yeah.
Go to the place where you're trying to get, then work backwards. So like even taking the girl to the prom. Wait a minute, I'm going to need a tuxedo. I'm going to need some money. Well, I don't have a job. I have no money. Well, before I start worrying about the prom, I may want to get a job and then start thinking about saving some money. So I have money to go get a tuxedo, flowers.
Yeah.
And I'm going to need a limo. And I'm going to need all those things to get to the prom.
Right.
Not to mention hoping that I'm lucky enough for the girl to say yes.
Right.
But you get caught up, stuck right at the...
Right.
And I love the working backwards process.
Say that expression again. Don't chase the money.
Don't chase the money. Chase the things that make the money. I
cool.
go and talk to a lot of teams, a lot of coaches, Division I basketball.
Yeah.
And I tell these guys, don't chase the wins. Chase the things that get the wins. Don't chase the NBA. What do you do? I'm going to be an NBA player. What does that mean?
Right.
No, what you mean to say is, I'm going to get faster. I'm going to get quicker. I'm going to jump higher.
Right.
I'm going to get I'm going to get my strength and quickness better.
Right.
And then have faith that by chasing by increasing those processes, if the right thing's supposed to happen, it will.
That reminds me of something in publishing. The people who always failed were the ones who would sit down in my office and look at me with this very steely-eyed look and say, my book is going to be a bestseller. And I hated that because it's like neither they nor I have any control over that. But what they do have control over is what they're neglecting, which is writing a great book, making it a wonderful experience for the reader, doing the heavy lifting. And then when it doesn't become a bestseller, of course, they blame everybody else. But it's like the worst goal.
But you think about it. I mean, at the end of the day... Most people say, my brain, I like to be successful. How do I get this? How do I get a company like this?
Yeah.
What you mean to say is, can you elaborate on some of these processes you went through and some of the adversity, some of the smarter decisions you made, some of the crossroads you went through? That's really what you want to ask a mentor.
Right.
Take me through the crossroads you went through. Take me through what you do in the morning when you get up.
Yes.
If you see somebody successful, copy some of those characteristics, what you do when you wake up. I used to always look at successful people. There weren't a lot in Scarsdale, but some that had successful marriages.
Right.
Because you're just getting married. I don't know. I couldn't use my parents' marriage as an example, so I knew I had to run away from that. So I mean, I'd see people that seem happily married. You never really know, and I'd say, how does this work? Like, what's some of the key ingredients? What's some of the troubles you've had early on? What's some things I should try to avoid?
I see.
And then you get some feedback. You know what you're about to run into.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
I try to say, if I'm married 50 years, how does that work?
Right.
What am I going to have to do here? What happens at 50?
Right.
And then I'm just trying to get that feedback and again, work backwards.
That's fascinating.
Right?
That's fascinating.
That's the smartest thing I've probably done for myself, really. Always staying 10, 20 years ahead, trying to get the picture of what that's like and then work backwards on.
So in other words,
into it.
to come up with an example in terms of marriage, your way of looking at things wouldn't be to say, I will be happily married for 50 years, but it would be saying, I will be tolerant of people I love. I will not explode at people I love, or something like that.
My view would be is, if I want to be happy for 50 years, I need to understand what's required to build up to that. I need to make sure I don't fall into the pitfalls along the way that would preclude me from being married for 50 years. Like, I talked to some different athletes that got divorced. I'm like, why'd you get divorced? Like, why'd you break up? It's not the worst thing in the world, but there were probably reasons. Now when you talk to someone who stepped away from it, say, now that I look back on it, I wasn't communicating correctly. I thought I was communicating, but I come home, I was beat. I never really shared a lot what was going on with myself.
That's interesting.
And you talk to some women and say, something I held back. I probably didn't have sex with my husband. Like, kind of held back on that because I've been pissed at him about something else. So I didn't give him sex, and that's why. So
interesting.
I realized all of a sudden, maybe I'm not having sex with my wife for a couple weeks. I'm like, something. This is not because she doesn't want to have sex with me, but she's probably pissed about something else.
Right.
And she's holding back on that.
Got you.
So my goal is not to argue and bitch about the fact we haven't had sex in a week or two, but to bitch and really try to find out what's bothering her.
Now, I want to cite something that you wrote in your first book that has always been a source of inspiration to me.
Love the first book, by the way. Most people don't give me a lot of props for that, so thanks for bringing it up.
Oh, absolutely.
I wish every high school and college kid read that book, by the way.
Well, I'm going to tell you a line from your first book that stuck with me now for 15 years, and I'd like you to extrapolate on it because it's actually meant a lot to me. If it isn't easy, it isn't possible. Talk about that, because I always think of that.
I always use the example, if it is easy and possible, that I think everything could be, first of all, if there's something, it's usually one thing that's stressing you and could ruin your whole day.
Yeah.
So I always use the examples of a pitcher at Iona. He had an ingrown toenail.
Mm-hmm.
I'll deal with this another time. I'm pitching tomorrow. Let me get. Meanwhile, he goes on the mound. He starts overemphasizing on the other foot and everything else.
Yeah.
And then basically tears his whole rotator cuff. Because this small little thing.
Yeah.
And I always say, the little things mean a lot.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Uh-huh.
The little things mean everything.
Isn't that fascinating?
And the truth of the matter is, and that people say, don't sweat the little stuff.
Yeah.
I burned that book. I
agree.
But a lot of people say,
I
don't
agree.
sweat the small stuff. I'm like, no, son,
Bullshit.
you got to sweat everything.
Yeah.
Particularly in relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that, because what happens is those little things end up popping up 10 years later when you're getting divorced or you're breaking up at your job.
Yeah.
It's something that happened. You didn't give me that day off, or my father died. You didn't even come to the funeral. You didn't even send me a sympathy card. You're supposed to be my boss.
Yeah.
Care about me. Meanwhile, I went through this whole thing and I didn't even hear from you.
Yeah.
Little things like that, I think, are everything.
They mean so much.
They do mean so much.
And people remember them.
And people remember them,
Yeah.
no question. So when it is easy as impossible, it's like, and I use this example. I had an employee that used to take a cab every morning to work.
Okay.
And one day he comes in, I'm like, oh, God, you know what I've been through? I'm talking about it. It's 8:30 in the morning. He goes, I live only 40 blocks from here. And I left my house at 7:30. It took me an hour to get uptown. I said, what's the problem? He goes, you try getting a cab at 7:30 in the morning. I said, listen, why would you, if you know after a couple weeks that you can't get a cab at 7:30, either get up earlier
Right.
or come to work a little later.
Right.
When there are cabs.
These are rich people
Maybe these are the times when all the cabs are going back to the thing, or maybe these are the time when most people want to go to work. I always tell people, like, I never want to get to the main core of where I'm trying to go, like at 5 or 10 to 9, because why? Everybody goes to work at 9 o'clock.
Right.
I don't want to be, why do you want to be with everybody else?
Right.
So either I try to get to work like more like quarter after 8 or 8:30,
Yeah.
or I'll wait till 9:15, 9:30 to go to work.
Right.
I don't want to get quarter. So instead of getting frustrated because it's waiting for the light, there's traffic coming off the exit, which hence, by the way, 2 or 3 minutes a day, Mitch, is not a big deal, right?
Right.
Let's say it's costing you 5 minutes to wait for that cab or to wait for the extra train because they're too crowded.
Right.
But that's really not 5 minutes. It's 25 minutes a week.
Yes.
Times 100 minutes
Right.
a month.
Right.
1,200 minutes a year.
Right.
Think about 1,200 minutes. All of a sudden, you've wasted 2 days a year of your life.
You might like that
just
someday
waiting
back.
for the goddamn train because it's too crowded.
Right.
I don't want to give that up.
Now, what you were saying about the importance of the small stuff reminds me of something. In publishing, I would always notice that there were all these people who they wanted to break out, they wanted to do well, and they were the ones also who handed in manuscripts without tables of content, without page numbers, without properly hyphenated or paginated manuscripts. And if it was ever pointed out to them, they would think it was a bunch of niggly small stuff that belonged in the lint filter. But I remembered it, and other people remembered it. And when you get a manuscript where someone hasn't numbered their pages, you're left with the impression, and I would argue the correct impression, that that person really didn't care. They really didn't say, what will be the experience of the editor or the other end user who's doing this? I don't remember what they said on page 69. I remember there was no page 69. And the small stuff is important. It really does matter. People remember it. It's emotional. It's emotional, isn't it?
I think it's
For
everything.
me it is.
I think it's everything. And being great, I think just giving a shit and taking interest in all the detail.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, I run into you at a barbecue, and I'm like glued to you because I know I want to write this one book, and I'm trying to grab everything I can to really just understand what it takes. So I always think, like, if you want to just do something, before you just go do it because you have a whim.
Right.
Sometimes you read the motivational, inspirational.
Yeah.
You have a whim. You have a feeling. Go
Right.
do it. I'm like,
Right.
no. Go find out what's required.
Yeah.
Get into the real detail, and also find out who's doing it the best.
Now, here's something else I remember from your first book, and this actually is in harmony with what we've been talking about sweating the small stuff. You pointed out that if you're some sort of a server, a waiter or a waitress, and you want to get good tips, make sure that you refill the bread basket, make sure you refill the water cups, and you can always tell the quality of a restaurant by seeing whether the waiter station is clean and orderly, and if it's not, it's an immediate giveaway. The place isn't clean and the place isn't well run. I've always thought of that because it's a small thing, but you can apply it on a macro scale, apply it on a macro scale. If your office isn't clean and orderly, what does it say to people who walk in there?
You're probably disorganized and disorderly.
Absolutely. And they get it.
If your
and
closet
they
at home
remember
is
it.
disorganized, you're probably a disorganized person, more or less.
Absolutely.
It's not a great quality to be disorganized. It's not a great quality not to follow up.
Yeah.
And it's not a great quality not to deal with the details.
Yep.
So when a server comes up to me and I could see in the corner of my eye the workstation is a little bit of a mess.
Yep.
I could see already that they're not organized. They're not together.
Now, you gave seminars on how to
Yeah.
increase tips, didn't you?
Yeah, I still do once in a while. My
Is that
Tips
right?
on Tips seminar, guarantee 30% increase in your tips. Or you
Amazing.
get your money back. I've never had to give anybody their money back.
You
I
do
love
these for
that
groups
seminar.
or individuals?
I do it for restaurants and hotels.
It's
It's kind of
fascinating.
like it's kind of like my childhood, growing up in restaurants and everything, and it's
Yeah.
a killer. It's a killer seminar, but it's amazing how many people will go wait tables and serve.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really excellent early career job because we're all here to serve and solve a problem. And usually when people come in, they got a problem. They're hungry. Their sugar level's low, whatever it is.
Yes.
So you're solving a problem.
Right.
And I think you can really learn a lot from trying to figure out how to solve that person's problem.
That's
By
fascinating.
figuring out what it is that they need to eat that's going to make them feel efficient, effective, or just full.
Now, I want to audit that seminar next time you give it because I know that
It's awesome.
whatever you talk about can be applied on a macro level. If something's true, it must be universal.
The problem is that there's all these seminars for management,
Yeah.
for restaurant management and owners, but there's not many server or seminars or conferences for the servers, for the busboys.
Right.
And the people want to know why those people aren't elevating and helping your company more.
Right.
Because all the attention goes to management, and a lot of attention should. But it'd be nice to have seminars for the players on a team, not just for all the coaches.
Right.
So the players have no idea how to manage their coaches and how to deal with those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And the managers are so much more advanced in learning how to deal with the players. And that's why you see so many problems on teams
Yes.
with players and their coaches.
Yes.
And there's
Yes.
all this focus on management seminars and management inspiration and motivation, not enough for the lower level. And that's your biggest upside with some of those people.
Yes.
And that's what kind of surprises me, and it needs a dramatic disruption.
Yeah.
Even in most businesses, most of the money gets spent on your upper level and high level management, and
Absolutely.
and a lot of should,
Right.
Because they're the ones that do set the trend. I don't want to diminish the importance of
Right.
of how things start from the top.
Right.
But I think a lot of things can pop up from the bottom.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You know, a few years ago, I gave a seminar at Goddard College called How to Get Happily Published. And instead of the usual BS, which is what color to make your cover sheet and how to be pithy and clever and so on, I really talked straight with people about what authors needed to do, what authors needed to expect, what publishers do well, what publishers do poorly, and there's plenty that they do poorly, and I say this from 30 years of personal experience. And I was really proud of it because I felt I gave people straight talk, but I didn't let them off the hook either, because I think most people simply do not work hard enough in the writing business. I want people who are mature in every business. I just happen to know writing. I want people who are mature and take seriously their role as an artist, take seriously their role as a writer, who are disciplined about it. The biggest problems that I personally encountered in publishing were undisciplined people who just had a mind to write a book and didn't give it everything, and I could spot it instantly. And very often it was through little things, as we were discussing, like not numbering your pages or whatever. Those little things were core samples
I
of
think
the bigger
it's true
problems.
in every industry, though. I think you're on something, and I think it's so true. Like last night I was having dinner, and this was an expensive restaurant. I mean, not a cheap place, with $30 or $40 entrees. And when I put the order in, I have a little kidney stone, so I'm constantly drinking water, and I felt a little dehydrated. So immediately, as he takes the cocktail orders, I said, I'd like some more water, please. Then the second time, I'd like some more water, please.
Yeah.
Now 3 times I have to ask you for some more water?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, and to me, and that's again, it goes back, it was very busy.
Right.
And so it wasn't like he was a bad waiter, but
Right.
this is where, again, the training, a great busboy.
Right.
Just like, not a lot of training for executive assistants or secretaries
Right.
or assistants.
Right.
But yet, how many times when an executive gets kind of crazy or a manager gets crazy, could the assistant, the secretary, the administrative person save that person's ass?
Yeah.
But how often do they not train and they obtain that attitude instead of being the problem solver?
Right.
And
right.
this is my problem when I go and speak is like a lot of companies go for this hype talk.
Yes.
It's either
yes.
a big name guy
Yep.
or a woman who really hasn't done anything since I could even remember, or never did anything.
Never did.
Or the last time they did something so long ago that
Right.
25,000 feet above.
Right.
It's kind of hype because I heard this person speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yet, they're not in the grind like we are.
Right,
And,
right.
And then the other thing is there's never any attention to the detail and to the small thing. They're
Couldn't
always taking
agree
these
more.
high level, high profile, talks that really, how much they really drip down.
Right.
Yet to me, I go find people that are grinding, people that are actually doing this stuff that you want your people to do.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
And very rarely do you go into companies and see them hire people like that.
Yeah. Even at
I knock on that. It just drives me crazy.
at a fairly, I've been there, even at a fairly advanced point in my career in publishing. I would get my hands dirty. I would, and sometimes had to do tasks that other people weren't doing. And I could see from the shop floor, from the perspective of the shop floor, how feckless and apathetic a lot of people were. And it really disappointed me because everybody was trying to come up with strategies and keywords and the digital revolution. And I was like, man, empty the waste paper baskets. Like, let's cover the basics and this other stuff will occur. But people would neglect the basics and nothing else would happen.
Now, you enjoying this process with your new book?
Huge.
Tour, speaking.
Love it.
Where's
Love
your
it.
focus on this?
Oh my
Where
gosh.
will you be?
I'm all over the place. I got all kinds of speaking gigs coming up. I'm going to be in Virginia Beach. I'm going to be in Durham, North Carolina. I'm going to be in Los Angeles. Actually, that's my nearest gig coming up. I'm going to be in LA March 4th through
Open for
9th.
people to go to? Or?
Everybody.
All right,
I'm going to be giving talks
We'll have to post this a little bit.
at a
where you're
school.
gonna be.
Everybody can come.
That's
It's
cool.
going to be a blast. We're going to have a great time.
You having fun with this?
Oh, I am having a blast. I've never felt better.
What's the best feedback you got from somebody that's read this book, and what have they said to you?
That finally somebody is willing to talk straight about positive thinking and New Age material, who believes in it, but who also sees the problems, who talks to the reader like a grown-up, and who is 100% blunt and frank. That means a lot to me. I want to write for people who are mature idealists, not childish, but who are idealists and mature and don't have an appetite for bullshit. And that's the audience that I love.
Was this hard writing this book? Was it hard?
No.
It sounds hard to me.
It wasn't hard. I mean, it took a lot of hours and it took a lot of sweat equity and it took a lot of time. But the thing that made it, I wouldn't say easy, but the thing that made it flow is I vowed to tell the truth. I wouldn't juice up any stories. I wouldn't mislead anybody, and I wouldn't leave out any ugly details.
Congratulations, my friend.
Pleasure, man.
Always
Thank you.
fun talking with you. Always
Likewise.
inspiring.
Likewise.
And always
Thank you.
informative. Pick up this book. Actually, no, don't pick it up. Don't. Buy 3. You know what I'm going to say. Buy one for you, one for a good friend, and one for somebody you know needs pure, 100% honest to goodness inspiration. Mitch Horowitz wouldn't steer you wrong. I love all his books. You'll love this one.